It's no secret that it's the fans that make or break the success of any video game. Ultimately, the products are for the players, but especially so for the dedicated ones. And those dedicated players can be very, very vocal when they dislike something in a game. Sometimes the outcry can completely overshadow the game and drown it in controversy before it's even out. Keep on watching as we discuss some fan controversies that completely overshadowed video games. First up, For Honor's insanely long 5,000-hour grind. Ubisoft's multi-period brawler, For Honor, really isn't a bad game. Once the player invests time into leveling different characters up, the fighting kind of becomes an art itself. But that's exactly what led to the problem. Ubisoft picked up on that notion and then tossed it far off into the distance, meaning it would take a ridiculously long time to unlock everything in the game. In fact, it worked out to be around 5,000 hours to unlock all of it. And if that wasn't available to players, there was a shortcut that could be taken through money. You might be wondering how much money exactly. Around the price of a deluxe game, maybe? Yeah, if you get like 10 copies of it. A sum total of $730, in 2017 that is, had to be paid to get full access to everything in the game, removing the fun of playing to unlock things for yourself and also the time constraint. So it wasn't really a big surprise when people called Ubisoft out for trying to exploit players this way, and eventually both the money requirement and time were significantly shortened. Next, the Battle Pass system for Halo Infinite. Halo is Microsoft's staple first-person shooter franchise, and it can usually do no wrong. Though it admittedly has had some wobbles, like the out-of-time sequels, studio changes, and delays, it mostly comes out of those problems unscathed. So it wouldn't be unfair to say that the anticipation for the next generation Halo was high. Yeah, even after Craig the Brute's reveal, players wanted multiplayer, they wanted campaign, and they really wanted Forge to mess around in. What they definitely did not want, however, was an unfair grind and season passes. But that's exactly what battle passes are, and fans were left pretty disappointed. Slapping on a fee for each battle pass and making players put 300 hours of work in to unlock everything did not make for a fun experience. Halo used to be a pretty simple affair, Blood Gulch especially so. As the generations expanded, so did the means of playing it. LAN parties turned into Xbox Live hobbies, and so on. But we now live in the time of microtransactions, and Halo Infinite is definitely no stranger to that. Reception to this new system was obviously not a positive one, but what proved to be the biggest insult to fans? Cat ears. Up next, post-review microtransaction in Gran Turismo 7. This was one we definitely didn't see coming. Not from a series that has had a track record as squeaky clean as Gran Turismo. This groundbreaking racing series from Sony has always had strong community support, along with consistently being well received. While it had released some demos that were clearly cash grabs and needed a couple of fixes along the way, it's mostly been free of trouble and controversies. Until the latest offering, Gran Turismo 7. Contrary to what you may think, the initial launch of the game went great. It was praised for being the best looking one yet, with both critics and fans applauding Polyphony's PS5 prize fighter. And then it went down for 24 hours in March due to maintenance. When it came back, it wasn't just with some patch fixes, but also the addition of microtransactions. Yes, they made the changes after review. When a game is expected to make the maximum amount of profit, Sony added in-game purchases. And it wasn't just that, they also increased the prices of the more expensive cars to encourage these purchases. People defending the change will say that it's possible to earn them in-game, but as we've already seen with the previous games, the unreasonable amount of work that alludes to in-game purchases that save time is disgusting. Though the worst part is that Sony pulled this after review. A testament to the unhappy fans, Gran Turismo 7 now holds the lowest Metacritic user score to date. Total War Warhammer 3 bombing before release. Total War has been covering the Warhammer series along with other campaigns and eras for a couple of years now. The fantasy tabletop game is not new to video gaming, but it's the third and most recent addition to Total War history that became the subject of controversy recently. A significant number of Chinese players became offended with the latest game for two pretty minor reasons. For one, they weren't very happy with the early gameplay issues in the pre-release footage, stating that it lacked the series' trademark polish. And the second reason was that instead of being given to longtime fans or streamers to review, it was sent out to those who were unfamiliar or straight up just not interested in the game. This understandably upset the fans, but instead of continuing on with it since they were definitely gonna buy the game anyway, they got on their computers and flooded flooded review pages with negative comments. An extreme and unnecessary response to something that was annoying but still not that big a deal. Because of this, Total War Warhammer 3 was overwhelmed by a sea of negative reviews which overshadowed whether the final product was actually good or not. Turns out the game was on the same level as the others, which made the fans look as petty as you'd expect. Next, Street Fighter V and the lack of launch content. Capcom's multi-million selling beat-em-up Street Fighter is not new to modifications. Even if you go as far back as Street Fighter II in 1991, that game alone went through multiple revisions over the years. The difference between that and Street Fighter V, though, is that Street Fighter II was a complete game when it launched. Each version was just balances, tweaks, and new characters. The situation was very different for Street Fighter V. For one thing, it was hugely devoid of content. The focus was, in Capcom's own words, to put the game out in time for the esports tournament. It was a bare-bones game, barely having any single-player or story content. As a result, fans were super annoyed about having to pay the full price for a game that was hardly even there. Capcom gave a rare, non-paid update in the form of a free story mode soon after, but it didn't do much to lessen the damage. SFV didn't end up hitting their pretty lofty sales expectation because, well, no one wants an unfinished game. The situation did get better with time, with Street Fighter V now being the second highest selling entry in the series. It's still stacked with paid content, but you can now purchase a more or less complete version with a definitive edition on the way as well. Up next, no easy mode in Returnal. Debates about the difficulty level in gaming are never ending. There has always been discourse, from games being far too easy to the gatekeepers pushing the get good attitude. In 2021, Returnal was the next game to become the subject of this discussion. Roguelikes are pretty much synonymous with difficulty, and Housemarque made no allusions to Returnal not being challenging, yet there was still an outcry. The biggest issue fans had were with the lack of checkpoints or save points, which basically means that players had to go as far as they could in one life, as it were. It is a bit surprising since even Dark Souls Bloodborne would let you save your progress. Housemarque did end up relenting later, giving fans some leeway by letting them suspend runs in an update. But still, for the longest time, debates about the game's difficulty raged on. Was it hard because players couldn't save it? Or was it hard and not being able to save it made the whole thing more annoying? The discourse did end up overshadowing the general consensus of the game as it became the lightning rod for last year's annual difficulty debate. It didn't really hurt the game though, as it went on to sell 10 million copies. Now, the refund petition for Battlefield 2042. One would think that EA would have learned their lesson from Battlefield 4's broken release back in 2013. 8 years later, it was obvious that they hadn't. While the former did end up getting patched into working condition eventually, the latter was expected to be in a competent state for its launch. Instead, it just ended up reminding everyone of a similar disaster from years ago. Fans went on to vote with their wallets, as they say, and demanded not only individual refunds from EA, which they were very insistent about, but went much further. A petition was started on the site change.org to have Battlefield 2042 pulled from every single platform, and for all of the players to be refunded. Currently, the petition has reached an impressive 2/3 of its target 300,000 signatures. It still may not be enough to get the motion passed, and there are probably a lot of laws about sold as seen, or promised products eventually making their way to the game through updates. Even if that happens, it won't change how unhappy fans are with the whole fiasco, and rightfully so. The game is, in simple words, a mess, in the same boat as Cyberpunk 2077 during its initial release. That's a wrap for this video. See you in the next one.